All right, what we got? Young generations are now poorer than their parents, and it's changing our economies. From Economics Explained. All right. Oh, 2 years ago. Oh, I'm so late. So many views. Um. Okay, I'm curious. Why is that?
A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. A
Mm,
Greek proverb from a time well before the problems of our modern economies or the study of economics itself is as true today as it was thousands of years ago. But do we really live by this idea? For the first time since the Industrial Revolution, successive generations are not becoming wealthier than their parents.
oh, median real hourly employee pay adjusted to 2018 prices. So, pound of sterling as your age goes on. So, the older you get, the pound of sterling goes up. And this was about at each line, increments of like what, 4 years? Okay. So in the beginning, everything was like up and then it like tapered off. But now, what is this? Everything just like what? It tapered off? Oh, wait, am I reading this wrong? So pink. What is pink? Pink's like right here. Just a little tiny guy. Let's look at gray. Gray is like up, and then I don't know. And then other pink, like salmon, goes like that. And then white, it goes up and it plateaus. We got orange, it goes up and then it plateaus. Red, it's getting a little more flatter. It goes up and then it goes down. Purple, ooh, it's not as high. Blue, same thing. What's after blue? Green. Oh shit, getting older. Number not going as high now. Yellow. Ooh, a number not as high. Oh shit, why is that? Why is this? This is kind of disturbing and it kind of sucks.
While there have certainly been setbacks and historical outliers from this trend, it has remained true in aggregate for the populations of most developed economies. For a long time, it was simply the expectation that people's children would have a better lifestyle in their adulthood than they did. But today, that really is no longer the expectation. In fact, most young professionals can only aspire to live the lifestyles that their parents did.
Mm-hmm.
Younger generations are finding it harder and harder to get reliable jobs, afford comfortable homes, start
What is this? Let me see. Let me go back.
lifestyles that their parents did. Younger generations are finding it harder and harder to get reliable jobs.
Millionaire tells millennials, if you want a house, stop buying avocado toast. Oh, I remember this quote. This was like a whole thing. It did not go over for this guy, like publicly speaking. Oh, yeah.
Jobs, afford comfortable homes.
The Guardian. It is devastating that it's devastating. The millennials who would love to have kids but can't afford a family.
Start a family and save
Why millennials are behind when it comes to saving for retirement and what they can do to get ahead.
for retirement. This is despite the fact that the world is a much richer place today than it was at any point in the 20th century when baby boomers were busy building their now unassailable fortunes.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is going on here? How is it that a world that is richer overall producing generations that are poorer than the ones that preceded them?
Well, all of the money is really concentrated up at the very tippy top of the 0.001%. That's where all the money is. You could even go down and go 0.01, and there's like some money there, but it's not like that tippy top. You could even go down as like 0.1. And it's like, there's a little bit of money there, but it's still not like that the tippy top. And then if you go to the top 1%, there's like some money there, but it's not the same. It is simply not the same. You want to talk about exponential growth and exponential wealth accumulation, bro, the damn graph, it looks okay, here, let me do this. The dang graph, let me do a line. There's that. There's that. Here, let me do it like this. And then let's do this. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, now we're going to do this. Where is all the money? Oh, it's going still. It's going. The damn money is all over here. It's all right there. That's where all the money's at. It ain't over here. Look at this. This is the graph. And even honestly, this is too much right here. This can even be like shoved, even further in there. Yeah, this is where all the money's at. It's all over here. It's not over here at all. That's where all the money's at.
Is there some underlying cause to this? If there is there some way to reverse it?
No. There is an underlying cause. People just got lucky. And, you take a little bit of luck with a little bit of hard work, and then you get a graph that looks like that. Think of all the things that you use, like a smartphone. Think about the companies that make smartphones, at least in America. Think about all the big tech companies. Think about what kind of shit that you got, what kind of things that you depend on every day. There's gas. Maybe you got a gas car. Maybe you got an electric car. I mean, I'd still say most people drive a gas car. Think about, do you use Amazon a lot? Well, there's that guy. He still exists. He has made a service. You use that. All of these things that you use every day at a constantly for the sake of, what do you call it? For convenience. Those are the guys that are making all the money. They got in there. They did some work. Who's to say how hard they worked? That's, kind of, we can argue that into the dirt, how hard they worked. But they also got lucky because there was nothing there, and they saw a need for for there to be something right there, and people, they just provided that service. Look at Amazon now. Amazon is a multi-billion-dollar company. Not saying like Amazon, I'm not saying Amazon is like the sole thing, but like there's other businesses like Amazon. They saw what people wanted. There was like a big blank bubble, and that's where they insert their service, and then luckily it exploded. It's a little bit of both, a little bit of work and a little bit of luck.
And if there isn't, does that mean that we can only expect every generation going forward to be poorer than the one that came before it?
From now on, yes. Unless something happens, I mean, at least from the United States point of view, unless something happens on a federal level, it's not going to change anything. The same people that are making money now will continue to make money. It is what it is. It's nothing is going to change that. You're not going to pass a law that makes them pay all of that money, distribute it evenly amongst the unwashed masses of normies, of poor people, of brokies. That's not going to happen. If you're waiting for that to happen, that'll never happen. It just simply won't. As far as trying to change it going forward, I mean, I don't know. I don't really think so.
From now on. Oh, and I suppose it's probably also worth asking, does this even matter? Since everyone is eventually going to die and pass down their wealth anyway.
Yep. Does this even matter? From a United States standpoint, I mean, everybody is generally living a better life than, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Yes, there's still homeless people. Not going to deny that, but I mean, I'm no like economist or anything like that. Some people, you ask some people like, oh, there has to be a lower class and there has to be a middle class and there has to be an upper class in order for capitalism to, survive and, all that shit. I don't know anything about that. But people, it's like people just want to be able to live their normal lives without having to worry paycheck to paycheck about whether or not they can pay all their bills, really, is what I think it is. If you ask most people, they just want to be able to own a home, own a car, be able to pay their bills, have some health care, maybe provide for their kids if they have them, and then just go about their day and like do their job. Maybe you take a vacation and maybe you have like some hobbies on the side. Maybe you have like a side business or something. Like there's nothing wrong with that at all. And I think that's fine for most people to have. Because as far as like that tippy top level of like billionaire / trillionaire, nothing is going to change to make them give any money to anybody else ever. If they're gonna pass their wealth on, they're gonna have a kid, and that kid is gonna get all that money. That's it.
Here's a question for you all. Is it better to be born into a large cohort with lots of people the same age as you, or a small cohort with not a lot of people the same age as you?
Oh, that's a good question. What do you mean cohort? What do you mean born into a cohort? I mean, I don't know. Knee jerk. What would be my knee jerk reaction? Be born into a cohort with people your same age? I don't know. Probably the one with more people? There's pros and cons for going into like each of them. I would imagine. With this one, I mean, I don't even know where he's fucking going with this.
Traditional economic theory would suggest that a small cohort is preferable.
Really?
It means less competition for jobs, housing, social programs, spots in good schools, and on a macro level, less competition for things as basic as natural resources.
Okay, so when you have less people, when you're born into a cohort that has less people, there's less competition for jobs. Okay, let me go back. For jobs, less competition buying a house, social programs, good schools, natural resources. Okay. Okay.
Because natural resources. But how then do you explain the baby boomers, which despite being part of the largest population explosion ever, are in aggregate very wealthy? Well, Lord David Willits.
Shit, my reasoning for choosing like the large cohort was literally, there's just more people to be friends with. That was literally about the only thing. Because when I grew up, I had like a decent amount of friends, but now as I'm older, it's like I have less friends. Just outside the people I go to work with, like that's about it. But then there's very few real life friends that I just have anymore.
A British politician, demographer, and author suggests that the opposite may be true, and that in a democratic system, being part of a larger cohort is actually preferable because it gives that group more voting power on generational issues
Oh, the voting power. I didn't even think about that. Oh, okay.
And more sway in marketplaces. When the boomers were young, they voted for policies that benefited them. Low cost or free higher education, family support systems, and strong social welfare.
All
When they
right.
got to the peaks of their careers, their voting patterns changed again, and now this large block of voters was in favour of lower income taxes, less business regulation, more domestic industry protections to avoid outsourcing and global competition, and on a smaller scale, things like zoning laws which would protect the value of their homes.
Oh, okay. I'm getting it now. So what? Did this happen all in like what year is the baby boomers? Isn't it like the 1950s to like 1970s or something like that? I don't exactly know. Maybe I'm like completely off. uh but I get that, you know. In the United States, there are a lot of laws that were just different. It was more of the Wild West, and as time goes on, the people that are just in there, maybe they got like some political power. Maybe they ran for like the local government or something, maybe mayor or whatever. And then they get a little bit of power, and then all of a sudden they start changing shit up to benefit them. All right.
The push towards suburbs with mandated single-family building requirements meant that houses got bigger and good locations got more desirable because only so many families.
Granted, each of these houses, like, they are pretty cool. Like, there are like nice houses, but like, god damn, dude, they're like just mushed against each other, dude. Like, you get like damn near no privacy. Like, you gotta have that quiet sex. Like, what? Don't scream too loud. You're gonna wake the neighbors.
Family homes could be built there. In the 50s, houses were basically a commodity. The majority of the expense was in building the structure itself, and it wasn't unreasonable for the family cars to cost more than the family home. Fast forward 50 years, and those houses are now investments as much as they are places to live. In old age, the boomers have now started voting to support retirement benefits, pension schemes, medical infrastructure, and to remove wealth taxes, even if that comes at the expense of all the schemes that serve them well in their young age. Of course, David Willett's work focused specifically on the UK.
I mean, that makes sense. You know, people are gonna vote in a way that benefits them. When you're a kid, you ain't got no money, no nothing, no property, no investments. But then, in general, when you get older, you got money, you got property, you got investments. You don't want to be taxed. You don't care about taxes when you're a kid because you ain't making nothing to get taxed. The older you get, the more money you get, the less you want it taxed. That's understandable. You know, that's not the most crazy thought of, I worked for this money. Yes, I understand I have to pay some tax on it, but where that line falls on like too much and not enough, it's like that's the part that's up for debate.
Okay, and yes, I know there are certainly people that vote for the greater good rather than their narrow self-interest, but on average it is easy to see this trend throughout the past half-century in most advanced economies.
Yeah.
In my own home of Australia, for example, the 2019 federal election was more or less decided by a policy decision that would reduce the tax effectiveness of Australian retirement accounts. The party that advocated for keeping the favourable tax structure ended up winning, primarily thanks to older Australian voters. We recently just had another election where that opposition party backed down on their plan to change retirement account taxes, and they won, very convincingly. A 2017 British election study found that over time, votes for Conservative parties have shifted from being divided by rich and working class to being divided by young and old.
Oh.
A lot of what I have discussed so far came directly from Willett's book, The Pinch, and a lecture he ran at the Royal Institution.
How the baby boomers took their children's futures and why they should give it back.
It's definitely worth a read if you are interested in these demographic processes.
Huh,
Now,
maybe
a
I'll go
lifetime
read
of
that.
favourable government policy can be hugely beneficial to building wealth. Imagine how much better off the average millennial would be if they got free college or secondary schooling.
Yeah.
Even all other things being equal, this would be the difference that a lot of young people need to be able to put a deposit on a house. And that's the next big issue to consider, the housing divide. David Willett's small cohort theory probably omits, or at least doesn't emphasise, one important detail that gave baby boomers another advantage over successive generations.
Mm-hmm.
And no, it's not simply that they were able to buy houses when they were cheap. Certainly that didn't hurt.
Yeah.
But it's more a symptom of a bigger issue. They were a big cohort in a small world. They had all of the voting power and hardly any of the competition. In the 1950s and 1960s, the global population was roughly a third of what it is today.
Okay, population growth by world region. USD in billions, 1910, 40, 60, 80s, 2000s, 2020s. In billions. Oh, damn. In 1910, there were only like 2 billion people? Or wait, no. Oh, wait. Oceania. Where's the red line? Where the fuck's the red line? Oh, wait. It's down there. Okay. Asia. Africa. So there's like 1, 2. I don't know. This is like... Wait, what? How does this white line, NA, go from 2 billion up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 billion? Am I just reading this wrong? I have to be reading this wrong. But population, as time goes on, goes up. That's the gist of it.
And not to start a whole thing here, but if you were a white man in the countries that we are mostly focusing on, your competition was even less severe. So, this added back all of the apparent trade-offs that we thought of earlier. There really was less competition for basically everything, including jobs, because employers had a smaller pool of labour to choose from. Labour force participation amongst women was very low, which further reduced the supply and hence the bargaining power of workers. But it also meant that domestic duties were normally taken care of, which reduced household expenditures on things like childcare, food, and general maintenance. These higher relative incomes combined with lower outgoings meant that houses could often be paid off with as little as 1 year's income.
Bro, that's crazy for me to think about. Bro, I'm like 34 and I don't even think I'll be able to buy a house at all ever. With my current job. Like, I probably could if I get a loan, but I for sure ain't paying that bitch off in a year. Like, oh my God, I can't imagine that. Go buy a house and pay it off in a year? Bro. I simply, that is unimaginable to me.
Yes, they did have to endure higher interest rates, especially in the 70s and 80s, which were their peak home buying decades. But it didn't really make the difference it would today.
30-year fixed rate mortgage average in the US? The fuck happened right here? Why is the interest so goddamn high?
The median home in the USA in 1985 was $82,000. That's median, so 50% of
The median sales price of houses sold was $82K. Bro, that's like a damn refrigerator box nowadays. That's like a tiny home. That's like a mid-level tiny home nowadays.
homes, like the ones first home buyers would be looking at, would be cheaper than this, but let's keep it simple and stick with $82,000. Adjusted for median household incomes, that $82,000 becomes $103,000. The average mortgage rate at this time was 15%, or roughly $15,000 per year. It did get higher in certain years, but most borrowers were fixed in at an absolute max of about 15%. So that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
The median home today costs $430,000, and the average...
Bro, I was gonna say something like a lot of the houses like around me, these are like actual houses. I'm in a fucking double wide right now. Like the really nice double wides are like 200-ish K, like 100K for half your home. But like an actual house with like a cement foundation and all this shit, this is like 400K. And this is the median. This is the median. Ugh.
interest rate is just over 5%, or $21,500 per year just in interest payments. Again, this is adjusted for median incomes at the time, so on the surface, these seem pretty comparable. Maybe the younger generations shouldn't be complaining about unaffordable housing after all. A lot of people brush away this comparison by saying that inflation at this time was extremely high, so these...
Well, I mean, plus, you know, this place, you living on the water, dude. You got all your goddamn boats. Like, I guarantee you, all these boats are with one of these houses. 100%.
higher interest rate payments didn't mean anything, but that's actually not true. Inflation in 1985 was 3.5%.
Okay. Inflation. Okay.
And while it was as high as 13.5% in 1980,
Jesus.
This was consumer price index inflation, not housing inflation. The prices of houses throughout these decades actually grew at a relatively modest rate.
Okay. Median sales price of houses sold in the United States actually went up. Well, yeah, for sure.
It was everything else that was getting expensive. This is kind of the opposite of what we expect today, where house price growth outpaces inflation. But that was not the case in the 70s and the 80s.
So houses cost more, but inflation isn't going up as fast as house prices are. Well, why the fuck is that? What? It all of a sudden, there's just like way less trees being grown? Are we running out of cement blocks to build houses? Are we running out of like roof shingles? Like what is going on?
So yeah, the inflation argument isn't totally fair. So is it fair to complain about how easy it was for baby boomers to buy a house? Well, no. They still had it easy for two other big reasons. It's not what you would expect, but the higher interest rates actually kind of helped them. Saving money for a deposit in an account that pays 10% interest per year really accelerates that savings goal. Higher interest rates also ensured that house prices never got too high because the repayments would just become unaffordable.
Yeah.
In our example from before, we were looking at interest paid on the loans from 2 time periods. But the thing with a mortgage is you gotta pay back the principal as well. Paying back the principal on a $430,000 mortgage over a standard 30-year loan term will cost an additional $14,300 per year, bringing the total annual repayment to just under $36,000. The house from 1985 would have a principal repayment of $3,000 per year.
Only $3,000 for the principal?
Bringing the total repayment to just over $18,000 per year, half of what the 2022 homebuyer would be paying, despite interest rates being 3 times higher.
Jesus.
Put another way, if the repayments were kept equal, the person buying the home in 1985 could have it paid off in 5 years rather than 30 years.
Oh.
So, why?
Okay, so it wasn't a year. I was just misunderstanding. It was 5 years. Okay, I mean, even that's still like hella short compared to like now.
Why am I focusing so much on housing? Well, despite being a very important part of our lives, houses are also uniquely unproductive. Real estate is kind of unique as an asset class because it doesn't produce anything of value. A house sitting on a block of land can appreciate in value and can provide a home to its owners or a rental income stream to an investor, but it doesn't make anything. Of course, there are other investments today, like cryptocurrencies, that also don't produce anything of value, but their market is minuscule next to the market for real estate around the world.
Holy shit. 340 trillion? 2.35 trillion? Bro, imagine paying your house off in Bitcoin.
World. Minuscule and also irrelevant. If the value of Bitcoin goes to $1 million, well, that's great for the people that invest in it, and it will have some minor knock-on impacts in other markets as people cash out to buy whatever crypto millionaires buy, but it's not going to put anybody out on the street. Housing affordability can do that, and it can...
What does this one? What does this one say? Full-time minimum wage workers can't afford rent anywhere in the U.S. according to a new report. Full-time minimum wage. Damn. And you probably have to account for like each state as well, because like a minimum wage in California is going to be different than, I don't know, minimum wage in some southern state like Florida, Georgia, where else? Alabama. That's going to be so different, dude.
Can also slow the progress of entire economies. Every economy in the world is still, for better or worse, focused around large centres of economic activity, what a regular person might call a city. If the
Yeah.
real estate in these cities becomes too expensive, then it becomes infeasible for workers to hold down jobs there because more and more of their income will just go to paying rent. In the short term, this can be offset by higher wages.
Bro, there's like some of these like strip malls with all these like businesses in them. Like all of their rent is going up, which was crazy to me because like there was one business called like Focus Fit, and it was a gym, and the owners of Focus Fit saw that they got like that the rent was going up, and they just up and just took all their equipment and just shut down. Like holy shit. That's actually crazy. Like, why does rent have to go up like so much? Like, who decides that? I know there's that like one like AI website robot that like determines value. That like what was it? Arkansas? Was it? I think it was Arkansas. That Arkansas was using, and how they determine whether or not the value of a building goes up. I mean, I got no idea, but I mean, if that's like becoming more of a thing to where people just depend on like some AI program to determine some random spike increase in value to increase rent, well then, and people can't pay it. I mean, shit. What are you gonna do?
But then these centres are really just operating for the benefit of the landlords that are lucky enough to own property there. The money that landlords make from their properties are unlikely to be reinvested into company growth or spent on regular consumer consumption that keeps these businesses in business. It is likely to be spent on more property, further driving up market values and
Return to the office? Not in this housing market.
the amount of money that gets sucked out of productive centres to be shoved into unproductive assets. Higher house prices also reduce social and geographical mobility. A 2020 Pew Research study found that 52% of young American adults between the ages of 18 and 28 still live at home with their parents.
Damn. That's me. I'm in there. Yeah, that's like it's more of a normal thing. I mean, what, I'm gonna buy a house and then just constantly live paycheck to paycheck? No thanks. That seems like dog shit.
One could also reasonably assume that this number is higher after 2 years of COVID and record high house price growth.
Oh yeah.
These young adults are financially bound to where their parents live. If they get offered a really good job in a different city, they would have to decide if it's worth the pay increase versus the increased cost of living on their own.
Yeah, you got to do all that research. Like, okay, I get a job like 5-6 hours away. I'm not going to commute there. Let's say I move there. Okay, where am I going to live? Am I going to rent an apartment? Am I going to try to get like a house somewhere? Or, you know, how much is my yearly income going to be? What, there's so much things. How much is the mortgage? How much is the home insurance? Or if it's just rent, you just rent someplace and live in an apartment. But then you got like all your bills. You got your car payment, car insurance, phone bills, fucking utilities and food and all that other shit. Yeah.
If they decide it's not, then they miss out on a good job and a business misses out on a productive worker.
Yep.
The concentration of wealth in a particular generation is something that can have very real consequences for...
I like how he says, in a particular generation. He is very appointed and very specific. And it's like very vague. And it's like, but you know. Like, if you know the generation.
Or entire economies, and these effects are only going to get more pronounced as populations continue to age.
Yep.
Places like Japan are clear examples of this, and they don't have the same kind of housing problems that we do in the West.
Mm-hmm.
But long term, does this even matter? I don't want to get too morbid here, but people eventually
But we about to get pretty morbid. Intergenerational wealth.
die, and their wealth will get transferred down to their children or some other beneficiary. So the concentration of wealth in a single generation is at worst a transient issue. I actually made an entire video last year about the Great Wealth Transfer, which
The post-boomer boom. The biggest wealth transfer in history is upon us. Oh shit, maybe I go watch that.
is the process of the baby boomers dying and leaving their wealth behind. The problem we discovered in that video was that a lot of the wealth that is being passed down is coming in the form of private family businesses. In brief, the problem with that is that often these small businesses need the owner to continue operations, and the people that stand to inherit these businesses are either unwilling or unable to run them. Small businesses are a huge part of the economy, and losing them will do a lot of harm. Now, a glimmer of hope here is that these businesses can be sold by their inheritors to people that do have the skills and desire needed to run them. Perhaps they will sell them to people who have themselves got the money they need to buy the business from their own inheritances. The problem here is the type of people that will actually be receiving this money. Most people don't receive money from their parents passing.
Rethink inheritances. These days, they go to the already middle-aged.
Until they are pretty old themselves, often approaching the end of their careers or starting retirement. If the money gets handed down to them, they are likely just going to use it to fund their own retirements and then just hand down whatever's left to their own elderly children. Money pooling in the hands of older people means less opportunity will be afforded to younger people to do all of the things that they do to build a functioning economy.
Well, here's the thought process. Let's say, let me whip out the old doodad. And then we got our brush. So let's say you retire at, there's your line. Like, let's say you die at like 90. That's pretty good. You had a pretty long life. That's like halfway. You're like 45. What's like the regular like retirement age? Like 50-ish? 30 years or something like that? Let's just say 50. You get a bunch of money here. It goes down here. And it goes, then people age. And then it starts the process over again. People age again. So this is what is currently happening. But the proposition is that the money goes somewhere further. Like, I don't know. Let's pick a random ass fucking age. 18. The money goes here. Then what? I mean, then what happens? Who is going to be the first person to do that? You know, if you're just giving the money to your kids who are like 45, 50 or whatever, whenever they retire, and then those people just age until they're like 90-ish, and let's say maybe they had kids, you know, what's going to cause something like this to happen, this big jump? I have no idea.
Buying a house, getting a good job, and, you know, starting a family so that there is a continual supply of workers to run an economy. You can't run an economy on people waiting to get old enough to finally do something with their lives. Economists call this the intergenerational wealth problem. I like to call it the Prince Charles paradox, but it is something that we are going to have to address. Things like wealth and estate taxes are commonly proposed solutions, but even if they did work, they are going to be very unpopular amongst the huge voting bloc that got us here in the first place. The final thing we've got to ask ourselves is this all the boomers' fault? I know a little bit of intergenerational bickering is all good fun, but blaming our current economic issues on a single generation is not going to be very productive.
I think it's a matter of, I don't know, ethics and morals, which is like a pointless conversation because you could easily science the hell out of, you could science and economics the hell out of someone that's 90 and has all this wealth to why they should probably give the money to like a younger person, but they're not going to do that. They're probably just going to keep it in the family, give it to their kids who are already like 40, 50, 60 or whatever. And then that same loop is going to happen over and over and over again. Like, I mean, I don't know like what a good argument would be for the, like, you would have to convince them that giving the money to like, well, not give, but like, I don't know. You have to convince them that the money going to like a way younger person is good for the economy. And I don't really see how, like, no one is ever going to really do that. Like, there's no one that's going to be like so selfless and morally righteous to do that. Like, I just don't see that happening.
Voting in your own best interests and policies being enacted in the best interests of the majority is the foundation of democracy, and I don't think that anybody is reasonably going to argue that this is a bad thing. I think it's also very important to look at examples of economies where this has not happened. The second largest economy in the world, China, is a great counterexample. Their generational baby boomers are known locally as the lost generation because they spent most of their working life in a dysfunctional economic system.
Jesus.
They were also too old to truly benefit from the rapid economic expansion that took place in the decades after the economy started opening up.
Damn.
This meant that despite still being a large portion of the population, they did not enjoy the same economic prosperity as their Western peers. Economic prosperity was also something that the boomers enjoyed that wasn't necessarily within their control. The last half of the 20th century, by historical standards,
Worldwide battle deaths per 100,000 people. Colonial, interstate, civil with foreign interaction.
was very peaceful. The world also opened up to international trade, and growth was put into overdrive by an abundance of cheap energy in the form of fossil fuels. It was a great time to make a fortune, and people did, which is probably the final piece of the puzzle. Once people become extremely rich, and I'm talking about multimillionaires and billionaires here, they don't normally become poor again.
Yeah.
The clump of billionaires that came from this generation will be skewing these figures to make them look worse than they really are. Remember, in a group with 1 billionaire and 999 people who are completely broke, the average member of that group is a millionaire.
Yeah.
Most billionaires are pretty old, and these people will be making outsized impacts on their generation.
Richest Americans versus richest Chinese. Yep.
Wealth statistics. Again, if we look at billionaires by age in
Jesus. So this is how the United States has a hold on the world, being like the country. Like, god dang. Like, bro, there's like so many people in China that just don't got shit. God damn. That's a big ass spike. But at least with the United States, it's like kind of level. But damn. Like the gap from here to here is just so exponentially massive. Like, it just looks like nothing. It looks like about a third, but the amount of money that is within from here to here, it's unimaginable.
China, a country where voting by the general population doesn't really happen in the traditional sense, we can clearly see that wealth comes from periods of strong economic conditions, not just having the ability to bend public policy to suit you and your peers. Although, of course,
That
I'm
helps.
sure it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. That's crazy. Like, I think channels like this are actually pretty cool, and it makes economics like actually like pretty cool to like learn about. Because like when I was a little kid, I didn't give two shits about fucking economics or anything like that. If someone were to ask me what's the definition of economics, I'd be like something about money. But then that's not really the case. It's a piece of it, but it's not the whole thing. And I don't know, something like this. I don't know. Maybe I'll go watch more of it. It's pretty cool. But yeah, that's a good ass video. Um, yeah, I hope to see more. But that's pretty much it for me. I'll catch you guys on the next one. All right, later.